It was a rainy day. Large drops of rain were falling on the ground and on the people passing by on the avenue at that time of night. No one noticed the elderly woman who was walking slowly along the road. The drops fell on her wrinkled cheeks and her worn-out clothes. The old coat had patches carefully sewn onto it. Antiquated boots, which would soon fall apart, were on her feet. On her head, a large, discreet scarf. In the elderly woman's hands, there was a piece of paper. She was constantly looking at it and around. It seems to be here. Yes, it's the same house number. I finally made it. The elderly woman sighed with relief. She stopped in front of an elegant restaurant. People dressed in expensive clothes drove expensive cars and entered with satisfied expressions. You only have time to ask for money, said one of the men who carelessly walked past the elderly woman. But the elderly woman didn't seem to have noticed the unpleasant remark. She opened a large glass door and stood still for a moment, looking at the brightly decorated walls and the exquisite furniture. Then, she went to the receptionist's desk. A friendly young woman, who had been smiling kindly a minute ago, wrinkled her nose and reluctantly said, "You must have the wrong address. Please leave the restaurant immediately, or I will call security." Dear girl, I'm not leaving. I reserved a place in advance and I have money." The woman simply couldn't understand why she couldn't enter. Are you kidding me? This is a decent place, not a place for people like you. Go away. The elderly woman froze in surprise and was confused. Yes, my clothes are old, but they are always clean and don't smell, and my hair is clean. I never allowed myself to ask strangers for money, even in the most difficult times, she thought. Her thoughts were interrupted by the harsh voice of the girl. Richard, come here immediately." A young man in uniform was near the receptionist. What's going on, Milena? Is there a problem? Yes, look at this, she said. She needs to get in here, and she has already paid for a table. Do something. The security guard looked closely at the embarrassed elderly woman. What can be done here? Let's check what she says. Show me your reservation. The elderly woman carefully pulled a handkerchief from an inner pocket of her coat and began to unwrap it carefully until a document appeared in her hands. Here, take it. The woman handed her passport to the guard. So your name is Miranda, 80 years old? The man was surprised. Look, maybe you misunderstood. This is not a restaurant for people like you. It's better to let her stay outside, Milena objected defiantly. No, I need to go to this particular restaurant. Check, I made a reservation, the old lady asserted. The guard dialed the number, and the response was truly surprising. Yes, indeed, there is a reservation and it's even paid, but I'm sorry. This is an elite restaurant, frequented exclusively by wealthy and respected people from the city. We don't want you here, the receptionist intervened again. The woman was deeply offended to hear this. Why are these people treating me like this? Why? I haven't done anything wrong to them. There has never been anything like this in my youth. We always supported each other for better or for worse. Miranda was perplexed but knew why she was there and wasn't going to back down. I didn't come here to eat. I need to see the owner. The receptionist and the security guard were perplexed. The receptionist was furious when she saw the old lady quietly pick up her reservation and start climbing the long stairs. Don't you realize what will happen when this lady approaches the guests? She got angry with the guard. What am I going to do? Richard replied. Don't worry, the manager will kick her out in an instant, and us too. You don't know how hard I work to have a job here, and I don't want to lose my job because of some old lady. I'll call the manager and inform him. What kind of day is today? I wonder why she came here. Miranda struggled to climb the stairs. This effort made her legs ache. Finally, this endless staircase ended, she sighed. The woman opened the heavy door and found herself in a large, crowded hall. The many bright lights, in the form of colored lights hanging everywhere, made Miranda close her eyes. Decorated tables overflowed with all kinds of food. Waiters with golden trays passed by them, and in the chairs, men in expensive suits and women in evening dresses. Miranda felt uncomfortable, but not a minute passed. She caught the disdainful look of a man whose index finger pointed directly at her. "What's this? This is not a homeless shelter. Look at this. Hey, waiter, can't you hear me?" "Yes, of course, I'll inform the supervisor." "Let's fix this, don't worry," the waiter rushed. That's right, this homeless person has a lot of courage. Now they're coming into the restaurant because the guards aren't watching this, said the lady in the shiny dress. Miranda closed her eyes, horrified. She had never experienced such humiliation. She wanted to hide. Another girl, already quite influenced by alcohol, couldn't contain her emotions. Isn't it a bit late for Grandma to go to the restaurant? At that age, you're already thinking about eternal rest. Would you like to come to the table with us? Just please, don't sit near me. I'm allergic to that kind of smell from those who live on the streets. The woman's loud laughter echoed through the restaurant. The old lady tried not to cry in the face of such injustice. What's wrong with me? Yes, I'm old, but that's no reason to mock and shame me in public. They themselves will grow old and sick. How can't they understand that? When I was young, there was no such thing. We always respected our elders, no matter how much money they had in their purse, Miranda asked herself, but she couldn't say anything aloud. But unfortunately, the mockery of the old lady continued. Screams were heard from all sides. I didn't pay this money to see a homeless person. Why should we endure such misery? What is the director doing? I'll close this restaurant. The waiters hid in corners and whispered among themselves. Many felt sorry for the old lady, but no one dared to oppose the drunken crowd. These people like to come here to have fun, more importantly, to show off their status. It was prestigious to work in a place like this. The owner wasn't stingy and paid generously. No one wanted to lose such a prestigious place. Only one girl, a waitress, was very upset. She hated seeing a woman insulted just because she was old and didn't wear expensive clothes. Aren't they human beings? How can you mock an elderly person like that? I'm going to talk to the restaurant manager right now and tell him what's going on here, she said firmly. You won't get anything out of this. The director will support the guests anyway because they bring profit to the restaurant, and the woman will be expelled. Nobody wants her here. You haven't been working here for even a week. Maybe you shouldn't take this risk, the entire team of waiters knew. There are more valuable things in life than money, but you don't seem to know that. The girl left the room with those words. The situation became completely unbearable. A man staggered up to Miranda, grandly, and said, well, why don't you sing or dance for us? You're here, come on, let's go. And the man clapped loudly. His silly idea was supported by others. The audience laughed loudly. Miranda couldn't bear the humiliation anymore. Her heart ached, tears streamed down her cheeks, her legs began to tremble, and she walked towards the exit. Before she could take a few steps, the door of the room opened, and a tall man appeared in the doorway. He looked questioningly at those sitting at the tables and shouted loudly, gentlemen, what's going on? Is everything okay? But the man walked past her. He was more interested in the love of his guests, the regular visitors. Scott, everything's fine, as always, except... One of the men pointed a finger at Miranda. Well, why is she here? You have to admit she doesn't belong here. Yes, get her out of here, don't be ashamed, and don't ruin our evening. The rest of the audience supported him. Of course, it's just a misunderstanding, and we'll resolve it now. As compensation, dessert is on the house tonight. Nobody else will disturb your rest, gentlemen. And you, come with me. He turned to Miranda. He didn't recognize me. Escort was just a boy back then. So many years have passed, a whole lifetime. He may have forgotten, thought the old woman as she quietly wiped away a tear. Are you listening to me? Scott asked again, thinking about how to handle the conflict properly. Yes, the woman stirred, awakening from her memories. Barely closing the whole door, the man said, hello, my name is Scott, and I'm the manager of this restaurant. It has come to my attention that the guests behaved improperly toward you. Forgive them. They simply weren't expecting your presence at all. I will compensate you. I know you paid for the table, you will receive double the amount. Not only will you be able to eat, but you will also be able to buy something for yourself. Scott, of course, noticed the old woman's worn-out clothes. It was no wonder she was mistaken for a homeless beggar. And what do people like her want? Money, the more, the better. But where did she get the money for the table? It's expensive, even for a working person. And most importantly, why? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Scott decided he has no intention of dealing further with this odd woman. Let me show you the way out. Come down, Scott said, pointing to the stairs. Miranda couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was her Scott, yes, now a grown and solid man, but to her, he's still a child, and he's still kicking her out. What a shame. The insults and humiliations from the restaurant guests were nothing compared to what Escort said. No, I'm not leaving until I speak to him. He must know the truth. In her thoughts, she didn't realize when Scott had already pulled out his wallet and was counting money. Here, take it. It's all I can do for you. At that moment, it seemed like the woman's heart would burst into pieces, but she found the strength to say, Escort, I'm not taking the money. Please, let me stay and talk to you. Escort felt he was losing patience. I have this homeless woman in my office. I don't know how to get rid of her, he thought, annoyed. He felt himself getting agitated. It wasn't in Scott's character to waste time and small talk with complete strangers. Sorry, I'm a very busy man. I don't have time to talk to strangers. Don't get me wrong, the man said. I'm not a stranger. I'm your mother. The lady could barely contain her tears again. Administrator Milena and security guard Richard looked at each other. I said she was inappropriate. You shouldn't have let her in. Escort didn't believe the woman's words. Look, this is too much. Why are you telling lies? What you're saying is a lie. My mother died years ago. About the money, it's your right, accept it or leave, but I'll have to ask you to leave the premises. Richard, deal with her. After a few moments, Scott disappeared from sight. What are you all standing around for? Come on, let's go, Richard ordered. The elderly woman could hardly stand. She was shocked by Scott's words. The security guard closed the door behind her. The exhausted woman sat on a nearby bench and cried. It was dark outside, everything was ruined, and she had saved for so long from her small pension to pay for a place in the restaurant where her son worked. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. In the morning, Miranda imagined the moment when she would see her son, tell him everything, be able to occasionally see her son while she was still alive. In her excitement, the woman didn't even notice the unpleasant wind that had arisen at dusk. Her hands were frozen, and her old gloves had disappeared. Maybe she was lost, but what mattered now? Thought the old lady, tucking her hands into the pockets of her coat. Suddenly, in one of them, she found an envelope. How could I forget? There's a cut baby picture in this envelope. He's 6 years old here, He must remember himself, then he will listen to me, exclaimed the poor woman, after the humiliation and insults she had suffered. She didn't tell the most important thing to her son. Miranda decided to wait until her son finished work and then, finally, she would talk to him. How much time had passed? It felt like an eternity had gone by. Finally, the door opened. Escort and some other people came out of the restaurant. He had already opened the car door, casually telling the driver to go home. Wait, dear, the lady shouted with the last of her strength. You again? Listen, go away quietly, otherwise I'll have to take extreme measures. I'll have to call the police, Escort replied willingly and got into the car. Let's go. No, wait, Escort ordered the driver when he saw the photo in the woman's hands. The man got out of the car and asked confusedly, where did you get that picture from when I was 6? A photographer came to visit us, so we took a picture as a souvenir. Don't you remember? Scott thought and said, yeah, I had 2 photos, but the second one got lost. Fortunately, it didn't get lost, the lady said. Surely, Escort knows that this photo was with him in an orphanage, then with the family that took him in, and now it's in an old photo album.
Mas como? Me disseram que minha mãe morreu de ataque cardíaco, Scott se perguntou, mas não encontrou resposta.
Hey, you're completely frozen. Come on, I'll buy you some tea and we'll talk, Scott suggested. The woman agreed, happily. Miranda was happy to finally be talking to her son, but if the woman's heart was calm, something strange was happening in Scott's soul. Emotions overwhelmed him, mixed feelings of hatred and joy for finding his mother, and hatred for his mother for abandoning him. Escort was fortunate to have an adoptive family. His adoptive parents gave him everything: a home, a good education, and upbringing. But they were very strict in their demands. Escort missed the love of his parents. Things could have been different with his biological mother. They could have been, but they weren't. Why did you abandon me and now, suddenly, you're trying to find me? It's too late to change anything, he said. Son, listen to me. I'll tell you everything, just please don't interrupt. I was born into a large family. My mother had 7 children. I was the eldest, my father died, the younger siblings grew up, started their own families, and moved away. I stayed in my parents' house, without a husband, without children, without a stable family. This pleased my mother, and I suffered for living my life for nothing, but one day everything changed. Thomas came to town, and I fell in love with him immediately. My mother reluctantly accepted, she had nowhere else to go, but my joy was short-lived. Thomas drowned, it was very painful for me. I was dying of sadness, but the troubles didn't end there. My mother died of a heart attack, and I was left alone. Life seemed to have no more meaning, but I received good news from you, my son. I found out I was pregnant. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I took care of you, loved you, wanted to be the best, caring, loving mother, a gift from fate, the lady said. What are you saying? Why did you betray me, putting me in an orphanage? You know, I don't remember your care, but I remember very well the terrible years I spent in the orphanage. If you came here to ask for forgiveness for that, don't expect me to give it to you, not even your old age will help, Scott said with resentment in his voice. The glow in Miranda's soul didn't last long. She had hoped so much that the photo she brought would help improve her relationship with her son, but unfortunately, it didn't. Wait, son, I'll explain everything. The woman began, but Escort abruptly interrupted her. I don't need your explanations. I don't believe you anyway, the man said. So many years had passed since then, and he himself would soon turn 60, but the memory of his childhood never faded. He remembered how every Sunday at the orphanage, he hoped his mother would come to take him home, but she didn't. Instead, it was a foster family. Miranda didn't know how to apologize to her son for this. She always remembered the day she took little Scott to the orphanage. He looked at her with eyes full of tears and begged her not to leave him in other people's homes, but the woman had no choice. She herself was going to a strange place called the hospital, and possibly, forever. Son, believe me, I had no other choice. My heart problems started a long time ago. At first, I felt discomfort, then severe pain and attacks. If you knew how much I blamed myself for not going to the doctors on time. When I did, it was too late. The doctor said only surgery could save me and that the chances of survival were slim, and even if I survived, I would have to spend a long time in the hospital. Son, forgive me, I was scared. I had no one to leave you with. I begged my siblings to take care of you, and while I was in the hospital, my relatives visited me, but they all had children and gave the excuse that they already had too many mouths to feed. I thought I was handing you over for a while I was in the hospital. It turned out to be forever. But suddenly, a miracle happened. The surgery was a success, and I left the hospital in a month and a half. I went straight to the orphanage to pick you up, but what I feared most happened. You had already been handed over to adoptive parents. I begged, terrified, for the address of this family, but the orphanage director refused. From that moment on, life lost all meaning for me. I kept dreaming that one day I would have you, no matter what happened. Today was the best day of all. My dreams came true, I saw you. Escort stared at the woman's face and eyes for a long time, trying to remember his mother's features, but he couldn't. He didn't have any photos of her, and time had erased her face from his memory. The woman spoke so sincerely about her life that the man found himself thinking that her words didn't seem false. To him, it could have been a fairy tale, but he believed it. And how did you find me after all these years? Scott asked. I'll tell you, son. About a year ago, in the park, I met a woman I had worked with a long time ago. Her daughter is the founder of a charity that helps place children in foster homes. This probably isn't the right thing to do, but she did some research on the family that raised you. So, she helped me find you. Son, how successful and smart you are, I'll be proud of you. Miranda, of course, understood that her son wouldn't be able to forgive her. No, the mark of betrayal doesn't disappear, but perhaps one day he would be able to understand and forgive her. And that forgiveness would be the best reward she could receive. The prolonged pause was interrupted by Scott. How are you living now? How's your health? It's just that you seem... Scott was confused, not knowing how to say it, just looking like a homeless person. Many people have told me that. Today, I lost my parents' house. My sister's children, my nephews, deceived me and took my place, but I have a place to live. I rent a small room. Don't worry about me, son. The important thing is that you're doing well. They didn't realize how much time had passed as they talked. It was getting dark outside and still raining. Can I take you home? Escort asked suddenly. Yes, of course, son, agreed the woman. Stop right here, I'm close by, just a few minutes away, Miranda said hurriedly. Are you sure? Maybe I should accompany you, the man suggested. Don't worry, thank you for listening to me. I will pray for you for the rest of my life. Miranda told Scott the whole truth. Only one thing she hid from him, something she was ashamed to speak about. She lived on the street for a long time, and then a man in the backyard of the house where she liked to sit on the bench took pity on her. He was the caretaker and had a small room on the street where, besides cleaning tools, a small sofa and a chair could fit. That was where Miranda lived now. She settled on the couch. Her legs and head hurt a lot, but she was happy for the first time in years. That night, she had the best dream of her life, a dream where she was with her son. A few days later, Escort appeared at her door. How did you find me? Asked the surprised woman. You found me, now it's my turn, replied Scott, smiling. Come with me, suggested Escort. Wherever it is, I'll introduce you to my wife and my grandchildren. You have 3 of them. Miranda was very happy. Then, Escort handed her a key. I have a small apartment. No one has lived there for a long time, and now you'll live there. Miranda almost lost hope, but happiness found her anyway. It found her and warmed her like the hot summer sun. This happiness was given by her son, who was able to understand and forgive. If you liked this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this.